Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's your boy The Last of Us Forever with 2 R's, here with another video discussing about what would Naughty Dog approach the world of The Last of Us with a prequel to the original game that came out back in the year 2013. Creative director, programmer, writer, and co-president of Naughty Dog stated a while ago it was sometime before the release of Part 2 and again after June 2020 with the release of Last of Us Part 2. He was questioned in an interview multiple times regarding a poster that was shown as an Easter egg in Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. And of course a lot of you guys have seen it before. It was the lady poster where she was wearing a mask, holding a revolver, and she was pregnant. Neil Druckmann responded back then that it is an idea him and the company have in mind, but they're not sure of when it comes to developing that idea into a full-fledged game. As we all know, we recognize that lady in the poster as Anna, Ellie's mother, due to the striking resemblance to Ellie's physical attire, mostly shown within the semi-red brownish hair and face posture. And the fast throwback to when we thought that Abby is Ellie's mother from the 2016 PSX The Last of Us Part 2 trailer, before they edited Abby's looks in the retail version of the game. Furthermore, if a prequel is bound to happen, which I think is most likely, I'm pretty sure we would be getting 3 playable characters. That is the known Naughty Dog formula, such as The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us Part 2 and Uncharted 4: The Thief's End, that are the company's recent projects having 3 playable characters, and those 3 characters are Anna Williams and Joel and Tommy Miller. First of all, seeing the world of The Last of Us from Anna's side, we of course would be having a look at how the Fireflies started forming up and also how she met up with Marlene, and of course a lot of references from the comic The Last of Us American Dreams would show inside the game's premises. Moreover, we would find out who Anna's husband was, not to mention how she ended up as a Firefly in the first place. Even seeing how she managed her little baby Ellie with all the burden of being a nurse weighed on her shoulders, leading up to her death. Meaning, we would also get to see how Ellie's life was as a mere 2-3-year-old child. Also, within the Firefly base, given Anna's position, she would absolutely encounter Dr. Jerry, the surgeon from Part 1 and Part 2, also now known as Dr. Jerry Anderson, who's Abby's father, which means there would be a high possibility that we would figure out who Jerry's wife was and how he ended up raising Abby as a little kid in the Firefly HQ. Plus, as Riley said in The Last of Us Left Behind, Marlene and Ellie's mom had an argument before the pandemic reached its maximum threat, which led to what we saw in the original Last of Us, from Marlene taking Ellie to safety, where we never heard of Anna ever again, and then we first met Joel. Now, switching to the Miller brothers, there are many questions left unanswered in Part 1 with Tommy and Joel. Starting with Tommy, who would we control for the first time ever. Seeing the world of The Last of Us from his perspective would be really interesting, since we would see how Joel and Sarah were in the past, because as an uncle, he of course was there for Sarah since her birth. Thus, tremendous flashbacks would be shown to the player, telling us who Joel's wife was, who only was talked about once in a dialogue between Joel and Ellie at the university. And we never even knew what she looked like, what her name was, or even how did she meet Joel in the first place. Including, we would see Tommy and Joel surviving as hunters for some time within the 20 years that have passed since Joel's daughter, Sarah Miller's death. Besides, as Tommy being by Joel's side most of the time, maybe we would see how Joel was carrying Sarah until they were shot by the military soldier in Part 1's prologue, and how they ended up digging up her grave and burying her next to the house we controlled Sarah in during Part 1 beginning, which I'm sure of would devastate the player, showing us the reason behind how Joel's character was developed to what we saw him as in Part 1's beginning. Transitioning to Joel, now a father who lost his daughter within his 2 arms, failing to save her, we would have a look at Joel Miller as a ruthless murderer with no soul or sense of remorse, surviving day after day. Which would lead up to what Joel told Ellie in Part 1 when they first reached Tommy's dam. Joel told Ellie that he and Tommy had an argument where each had a different perspective of the world they currently live in, ending up with Joel as a smuggler slash hunter and Tommy joining the Fireflies with Marlene and Eugene. Note that there would be a strong potentiality that Tommy and Dr. Jerry would have met before, or even Tommy and Ellie's mother and father meeting up, without him even noticing or knowing, since when he first met Ellie in part 1 and got to know her better in part 2, he never mentioned her parents. Either they died before Tommy joined, or he just didn't get the chance to know their last names. Or maybe Anna was using her own last name, not Williams, that she took from her husband. There would be countless and endless possibilities to how Tommy Miller's past life was as a Firefly. As for Joel, we would then get introduced to Tess and Bill and finally see how this trio came to know one another and how Tess and Joel managed to cope with one another, causing their bond to evolve into a partnership, including finding out more about Tess and Bill's background, such as Bill's boyfriend Frank, what he owed Joel, those facts that were talked about throughout dialogue in part 1 in Bill's town, or even his full name and family name, including Tess's full name and family name. Not to mention that we would also find out how Joel and Tess met Marlene before the original game started, since after Joel and Tess confronted Robert and killed him, the way Marlene approached Joel and Tess signalized the friendship, where they of course became acquaintances before, or even worked together before Joel and Tess started smuggling stuff from Marlene. Like she told them in part 1's QZ section that she needs something smuggled outside the city, which we later found out is Ellie. Furthermore, when Tommy and Joel first reunited in part 1, Tommy stated that he managed to return to Boston trying to visit their old residences. Thus, we as the player would get the chance to witness how the Miller's residence looked like after the pandemic hit its threshold. Of course, without a doubt, it would be a total mess compared to how we first saw it in part 1's prologue, plus the presence of Sarah's grave in the backyard. As the player controlling Tommy walking through the house cautiously due to the probability of an infected roaming around or even a hunter laying down there, he would find old pictures such as the one he gives to Joel back at the power plant in part 1, along other photos Sarah had hung on the wall in part 1's beginning, and we get to see who were these mystery characters that were with Joel, Sarah, and Tommy in some of the photos taken, and somewhere along the damaged rooms, Tommy would be able to find the note Sarah had written to Joel on his birthday, leaving the player to be as broken as an uncle would be while witnessing this sorrowness. Besides, along all these occurrences happening between Joel, Tommy, and Anna's perspectives of the game, we would come to realize what was the cause of the infected's beginning, and how did it start spreading, and who is the criminal mastermind behind the world's ending. All of these, we would see them from the Firefly HQ. Also, from Anna's perspective, we would get to see how Dr. Jerry Anderson is working on the infected's vaccine and how did it start. Or even how did Ellie become immune? Was it because of the experiment performed on Anna or on Ellie's father, leading her to an absolute immune system to the cordyceps? After all what we've seen, we would finally witness how Tommy ends up leaving the Fireflies and meeting up with Maria and her father. And how did Ellie's mom pass away when she first gave birth to Ellie? And was it because of her immunity? And how did Marlene end up securing little Ellie? And Joel finally having an argument with Tess, telling her that he wanted to be left alone after they figure out their companion, Robert, double-crossed them, leading to the present events that occurred in The Last of Us Part 1. Thank you everyone for watching. These were my theories and speculations regarding The Last of Us Prequel. If you have any unanswered question from Part 1, leave it down in the comment section. Until then, I'm your boy, The Last of Us Forever with 2 R's. Follow me on social media, Instagram and Twitch, and see you in the next one. Peace.